Hello and welcome to another monthly review video. This is for April and May. I just never got around to doing one for April, and it's already June, so I figured if I want to keep this up, I need to keep the cadence up. So I needed to get another video out in this series. There's not a lot to talk about in this one. For some reason, in the last 2 months, I haven't been reading and watching videos and all that other stuff as much as I usually have been, but I have some stuff, so let's get right into it. Okay, this first book is called Cognitive Illusions, and this is edited by Rudiger F. Pohl. Probably said the first name wrong, so I apologize. This is basically a book about how we perceive things. So it's not necessarily how we perceive things, but how we process things in terms of what we're receiving. So it's not optical illusions per se. So it's not about our perception of seeing like a grid where if you move your eyes around, you'll see black dots, but if you look at them, then they go away. You know, it's not like those kind of optical illusions. It's about how we perceive a statement, and do we logically interpret it correctly? Do we perceive statements about odds and betting correctly? It's a good book, but very technical. This felt like it was something that you would read in a graduate course in psychology. And there's nothing wrong with that, to be very clear. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What I needed was the layman's version of cognitive illusions. So some of the material in the book, when they talk about the studies or the scenarios, or however you want to say it, did make me think, because those were written well, but then they get into very detailed information about past studies and other things that have been done in academia, and wow, it just went way over my head. So I have to admit, I didn't finish it. I really just kind of ended up skimming through at times, which was kind of sad, because I actually did like the book. Just understand that if you're going to get it and you're going to read it, it is, at least I found it to be very difficult to get through, and a lot of it just whooshed over my head. So that's Cognitive Illusions. Okay, the next one is Night Angel. This is the complete trilogy by Brent Weeks. And if you look at hopefully I got the thickness of the book, this is actually a trilogy, and they put it together in one book. So if I go to the end here, just to give you an idea, we're talking about 1,225 pages. So this is not easy to carry around. Just the physical sheer size of the book is a little bit of a workout. I should weigh it just to see how much it actually is. So yeah, it's just physically demanding to read. I love books, physical books. That I don't know if I'm ever going to do again. I think I'm going to think a little bit about getting a book that big to carry around, because it's difficult. The trilogy itself is, it's a fantasy trilogy, wizards and warriors and all that stuff, thieves, and but he uses very different terms for all these things. In fact, the terminology started to get somewhat overwhelming after a while. Like, what's a Verdermeister? What is Veer? What is, I like Deader. That was a good term. But yeah, I have mixed feelings about the whole trilogy. It was highly recommended. Got a lot of good reviews. Went through it and read it. And so, it's actually reading 3 books, so it's like one book, but yeah, I did actually read a fair amount over the last 2 months. It's done well. It's written well. The characters, for the most part, are interesting, but I felt like the endings, especially to the second and third books, were rushed. They just didn't seem to, like, we got to end it real quick and have this massive, huge battle against these huge evil things. I don't know. It felt rushed. Sometimes I'd read about characters and go, how does this all tie together? How do these things actually all come together and work, and why do all these things matter? And I kind of left the books at the end feeling somewhat unsatisfied. There's a book that I just read, and that will be in my June review, which I will do. That is, to me, a very good example of bringing together, not a huge set of characters, but a very open premise and tying it together very well, I think. This just, again, it was interesting. I can't say I'll recommend it, but I can't say don't read it either, because it might just be my taste. It might just be my personal preference. So, yeah, take it for what it's worth. I have other books from him, and I will read his stuff eventually again, but this one, yeah, on the fence with. Okay, the next one is Light of the Stars, Alien Worlds and the Fate of the Earth, Adam Frank. So this is basically a book that I kind of blasted through pretty quick. It's not a hard read to get through. But it basically talks about, where we are in history, and I mean it's like almost geological history, but also current history, and how we are changing the planet, and how by looking out at the stars and looking at exoplanets and looking at how things work within the universe, and could there be life in the universe, should give us a perspective on what we're doing to our planet right now, and can we course correct? Can we change things? Can we take that perspective and use it to source real change, to provide that kind of push for people to really change their perspective and also their behaviors on the world that we live in. It's good. It's not the greatest book I ever read, but it's decent. It was, again, pretty easy to get through. It's written well. It flows well, so that's good. A lot of these concepts I've heard of before, so it wasn't anything really new to me, but it was, for me, it was more the reinforcement of look up sometimes at night and just look at the stars and start to think about just how ginormous our universe is. And it's not, I don't say that to people, or even to myself, as a way to say we're insignificant, or the problems that we have in our world, they're insignificant to the universe. Because in some ways that's definitely true. What happens to a system in another galaxy, millions if not billions of light years away from us, what happens here is so insignificant, in terms of the choices we make in society. And yet, because we're so isolated from the entire universe, what we do here is extremely significant to us, because there's no alien race coming to save us. There's no there's no other sentience, as far as we know, that we can model ourselves and try to learn from. This is all we got. And at least for now, don't know of anything else. So I think that book was good in just a refresher and a reminder of, again, taking that perspective. I sometimes just look up at night, and I love just looking at stars, and it's kind of a meditation in a way, just to refocus and think about what is important. And this ball of rock that we live on with water is very important. Okay, I'm going to end on 2 movies that I've watched. I have a third one here, but I don't know if I put it in my last video, so I'm going to skip it. But I'm going to do these other 2 that I watched, and very, very good movies. Highly recommend both of them. The first one is, I'm looking at my list over here so I say it right, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So this is a movie, I forget the actress's name, but she was the police officer in Fargo. Frances McDermott, is that her name? I think that's her name. So she plays a mother who's divorced, has a son, and also had a daughter who was raped and killed, and brutally killed. And it's been, I think, 7 months since it happened. There's been no break in the case, and she's just fed up. But she's got a very quiet determination. She's not, she doesn't have a very extroverted personality. But this is obvious. I mean, it's so obvious to say this is obviously destroying her and affecting her in so many ways. So the movie starts with her renting out 3 billboards near her house. Ebbing, I'm assuming, is either a real or fictional town. I don't think this is actually based on a real story, but her character lives in a house that's outside of the town. So there's these 3 billboards that she rents to put up signs that basically say, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but basically my daughter was raped. This happened 7 months ago. Why hasn't anything been done? And then she names the head sheriff of the town. It's played by Woody Harrelson. And of course, this is out where she lives, and it's hardly noticeable, but once some people start seeing it, it quickly gets controversial, and why did she do this, and all this other stuff. And I don't want to give away too much, because the intent is watch the movie. It does have a couple of flaws. There are some things that, after my wife and I watched it, we said that didn't seem right. Like, that didn't... I will give one thing away. A character gets burnt because he jumps out of a burning building. And apparently they're severe enough that, they're going to stay with him, but he gets out of the hospital rather quickly, and he doesn't seem to be in a great amount of pain. And I hope I never get 3rd-degree burns. You see people that are burn victims, and the pain and the suffering they go through is tremendous. This didn't seem like it. So I'm like, is he eventually going to heal from this? Or, I don't know. It didn't seem that realistic. And there's a couple of other things like that. But that said, I think the acting was superb. I think it was done very, very well. And the way it ends is one that I think is worth just thinking about, because, again, I don't want to give away spoilers, but it's kind of an ending that, when my wife and I were done watching it, I said it feels a little unsatisfying, but I think it's also realistic in a way. You'd have to watch it to understand, or at least maybe see where I'm coming from with that statement. But yeah, I would watch it. I think it's well worth watching, and it's just a good story, a good movie that flows for the most part really well. The last one, and this is a good one. This is Blackkklansman. Of course, I'm not saying all the KKKs, because it's literally about, there's 3 Ks in there. And this is done by Spike Lee. So this is one of those movies that's based on a true story. I was reading about like how much of it is true and how much of it is embellishment. There is a fair amount of embellishment, and again, it depends on how much you read up on the movie. But there is an officer in the 70s in Colorado who joins a police force and ends up infiltrating the KKK such that he actually gets a membership card. And I hope I got that true. The rest of it's a little, this is based on a true story, and there's more brought into it. But so what? The movie itself was just awesome. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was shot well. I thought it was acted well. I thought the story was done well. There's humor. There's drama. There's tension. There's really good discussion between characters. The main character, who's played by John Washington, I believe his name is, who's Denzel's son, and it is amazing. I've heard him now in this movie, and there's another one that I've seen that I believe he's in, and he's in the upcoming movie Tenet, which I am so waiting to see. It's debating in my head, God, do you see this in the theater of COVID-19 and everything else? But I love Nolan's movies, and he's the main actor in that movie. He's a force. He's definitely really good. But if I watch movies with him, I sit and I just close my eyes, and I just listen to his voice. He sounds so much like Denzel. It's just like, wow. And it's funny, if I have friends that I talk to their sons, and the sons are older, they're not still young, where their voice hasn't changed. Sometimes the voices are almost spot on, and it's like creepy in a way. I don't know why. I don't know if my sons or one of them sounds like I do. I'm not sure, but he sounds a lot like his dad, and he's definitely on the path to being as good of an actor, if not already there. He does a great job in this movie. So, really highly recommended. It's uncomfortable. Definitely at times it's uncomfortable. Especially, I forget the name of the movie that they watch. It's a real movie. This is going to bug me. You can see me drinking coffee this morning and I'm just forgetting. Is it Birth of a Nation? But it's this extremely racist movie that was made, when they didn't actually have sound in movies, and they'd show a scene and then they'd have the text there and then they go back and forth. I think it's Birth of a Nation, but in any event, they have that movie in parts in this movie. And it's like, what? It's nauseating. The racism that the KKK has, and the digs, which are not so subtle, especially near the end, about the current state of the nation, specifically the United States, is pretty blunt, to say the least. And especially now, when I'm recording this video, we've had over a week of protests in the United States, all over, because of violence and and other issues related to police officers, and pulling a Band-Aid off of a wound that's been there for centuries. And it's very very relevant to the state of at least this country, and I would imagine in other countries, that because racism is not something that I think solely exists in the United States, though it's, like I said, it's been here for a long time. This is not a recent issue. This is not something that's just popped up like months, years, decades, no, centuries. It's been here centuries, and there are many cases I've seen in my life where there are some very racist individuals. And the thing is, you're not born with it. You learn it. And we have to stop teaching people about this. We have to start teaching people a better way about each other. So the movie is very timely in a lot of ways with what's going on in the United States. Highly recommended, well acted, and again, there are definitely moments of humor. There are definitely moments where I was laughing my ass off because of some of the things that were said. So it's not all dark, it's not all drama, it's not all serious, though that's definitely a part of it. But there are also moments that are very lighthearted and very funny. So watch it. Highly recommended to watch it. So that's going to take care of April and May for my reviews. Already starting to dive into some books for June and hopefully watch a movie or two to review. So that's all for now. See you in another month.